Hello, my lovely rose garden, and welcome to a video that is several years overdue. I am Avalon Roselin, indie author, and apparently a very forgetful one. I have made all about videos for my two other books, Alice and Like Falling Stars, as well as my soon-to-be-published work in progress, Shifting Roots. At some point between those videos, I simply forgot that I had never actually created a similar video for the Stellar Eclipse series, despite it being one of my oldest and longest-running projects. In fact, until just a day before I started writing this script, I thought that I had already posted one. How silly of me. So allow me to correct this mistake. Stellar Eclipse is a series of novels that quite honestly defy any attempt to assign them a genre, which I began writing in middle school and published, well, a few times, but the current version that is available today was published in 2018 with the first volume, Cloudless Rain, followed by Dark Lightning in 2020. The third installment, Echoed Thunder, is currently being drafted and is taking a while due to the sensitive subject matter and other projects and life circumstances demanding my attention. On the bright side, I can confidently say that Echoed Thunder features the strongest writing I've ever produced and will likely not need many revisions before it is ready to see my editor, so that's certainly helpful. I'm also planning two side stories to the main trilogy, Silver Star, which will be a prequel focused on the villain of Book 1, and an as-of-yet unnamed alternate sequel to Dark Lightning that follows the other half of the characters who do not appear in Echoed Thunder. I hope I haven't lost you. As previously stated, this series likes to shake off any genre label I try to put on it, and each of the books tends to be very different in tone and scope from the previous installment. One thing that remains consistent, however, is a focus on world building, which is one of the things that has made work on this series so fun and so intense. I built an entire language that gets used maybe a handful of times in text. Levels of intense. Stellar Eclipse is set in a world that, ironically, did not originally have a name when Cloudless Rain was published. The continent, now called Aishan, was simply referred to as the West and the East. The East is home to what most of us would probably call the humans of this urban fantasy world, people that don't appear to have any special powers, at least on the surface. Readers will find out that isn't completely true when they actually get to visit the East in Echoed Thunder. The East is a colonial empire that has long subjugated the people of the West, called Azures, for their blue-toned blood and blue-pigmented skin and hair. Azures are far more specialized in terms of natural survival, possessing traits like greater strength and endurance, speed, larger size, tails, claws, and/or wings, depending on the tribe. While there are definitely villains in at least the first two books of the series, the main source of the protagonist's problems almost always traces its roots back to colonialism and discrimination. Let's move on to the characters and plot of the first book, shall we? Azzy is a perspective character in all three of the main trilogy books, and he has had a difficult life, to say the least. When he is introduced in Cloudless Rain, he is effectively nonverbal and has spent his entire life confined to a single house, with only an abusive woman seeing to his most basic needs. He is set loose into the world, a place he is convinced is dangerous and full of bad people, by the prophet of his caretaker's cult, and from there comes to learn a great deal about the outside and himself. Guiding him on this journey are Balton and Aeriel, two retired murder investigators who once worked on the most dangerous cases they could find, including imprisoning the cult leader that has made Azzy's life so miserable 15 years prior to the events of Cloudless Rain. Aeriel is a very paternal figure, having always wanted to start a family, but never quite finding the time or resources or partner to get around to doing so. Instead, he focuses all his nurturing energy on the neighborhood's stray cats, much to Balton's displeasure. Baltan is much more rough around the edges and cynical when compared to Eireka, but has stayed by his former partner's side due to the respect and trust shared between them, and also Baltan's nearly masochistic hope that one day they might be romantic partners. When Eireka finds a suspicious article in the paper detailing a murder that Azzy supposedly committed, he goes out to find the boy, and does find him, half dead and nearly drowned in the ocean, clearly unable to have killed anyone. That begs the question, who really committed the murder, and why, and how did Azzy come to be in the state he was in? Despite Baltan's arguments against it, he decides to help Eireka solve one last case and help this hurt, frightened child find justice and stop the potential mass murder of many more. Their investigation takes them to a few different locations where they meet Llewellyn, the adult son of the cult leader, and suspecting he may be a target as well, take him into their custody for protection. Eireka and Llewellyn are Azures. Baltan is an Easterner, and a rather unusual one by the standards of the world, since he, actually spends time with Azures and respects them. But even he isn't perfect, like when he assumes that Eireka won't have difficulty getting access to one of the Azure villages for their investigation, and gets corrected that no, not all Azure tribes inherently get along, and they have their own histories of conflict that were aggravated by the East. Azzy is half Azure, half Eastern, as evidenced by the lack of blue pigment on his ears. The villain, surprisingly, is also an Azure, but follows the teachings of an Eastern god who, the less said, the better. Found family and dealing with trauma are the two major themes of Stellar Eclipse. Every single one of these characters has, at some point in their life, been Fate's chew toy, from Baltan and Eireka both being disowned by their families, to Azzy and Llewellyn being abused their entire lives due to the villain's actions. And yet, by coming together and sharing their pain with one another, they're able to find healing and acceptance. Or at least they would if Llewellyn would open up, because as of Echoed Thunder, he's still trying to deal with it all by himself, and it's not going well. Unfortunately, I can't really talk about Dark Lightning without spoiling Cloudless Rain. Though the plots are fairly self-contained, a lot of what happens in Dark Lightning is occurring as a direct result of certain characters' actions in Cloudless Rain, plus dealing with some extra physical and mental scars acquired in the first book. While Cloudless Rain leans more into the thriller side of the series, with Baltan being one of the leading point-of-view characters and getting into the murder investigation, Dark Lightning has Eireka's more introspective viewpoint and a more personal conflict between him and his family to contend with. There is still external conflict in Dark Lightning, but it starts to take more of a back seat to the internal conflict. And in Echoed Thunder, the conflict is almost entirely internal, stemming from Llewellyn's unhealthy coping choices. The scope of the external conflict shrinks a bit with each installment of the main trilogy, but the personal stakes of the characters increases. In Cloudless Rain, the characters are trying to stop a catastrophic mass murderer that, in the best-case scenario that the cult leader is wrong, will still result in the losses of about a dozen innocent lives and a possible war. And if he's right, would unleash a world-ending cosmic entity. In Dark Lightning, the characters are trying to assist an entire village and stop their culture from being wiped out due to displacement. In Echoed Thunder, the characters are mainly dealing with the emotional fallout of the last two books as they try to move on with their lives and figure out what the future holds for them. Despite all three of these books being very different, I still think they work as a series. The feedback I've received from readers and my own experience while writing has been that it's the characters that people are drawn to, and the plots progress naturally as the reader follows their lives. Not every book needs a big bad monologuing about his evil plans, and Celeste does a good enough job of that in Cloudless Rain to meet the quota for the whole series. Maybe the reason why I haven't posted this video before now is because it's very difficult for me to talk about this series. I love these characters so much, and they have been a part of my life for so long, it's hard to even know where to begin. I hope to get Character Corner videos made on at least the main 4 this year, so hopefully that will give me a better way to express how much they mean to me and how much I have enjoyed writing about them and their struggles to simply live and be happy in defiance of all the pain and trauma they've been through. I'll link some other videos I've made about this series and the awesome Drawing a Blank episode about Eoreca that I commissioned from TennelleFlowers some years back in the description. Check those out, and if you think this is a series you'd enjoy, which if you like my other content, it probably is, then remember you can pick it up from my Etsy shop or any other place that books are sold online. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope you'll keep growing till next time, Rose Garden.
Thank you so much for watching, and a special thank you to my patrons. If you'd like to see your name here or in the description below, please consider joining my Patreon. Your support means so much to me and allows me to continue making content. If you want to support my content in different ways, consider buying my books, donating on Ko-fi, subscribing to the channel, or even just giving this video a like and comment. Any and everything is appreciated so much. Keep growing till next time, Rose Garden!